Hello, and welcome along to creating motion graphics in Adobe After Effects with your host Robert Smith. In this part 2 of creating a scene using video and Photoshop files, we're going to add a background. Now this is going to be one of our first effects. We're going to make background, actually generate something in After Effects. Now let me show you how to do that. In the first video we put this Louis Prima video on top of this TV. So that's all finished now, it's working fine. I'm going to lock that layer as well. You notice it's got a little icon over here to tell you that there's sound on this video clip. Okay, now to generate something in After Effects is a long story in itself, but let's do a quick demonstration. We need something called a solid. Now what's a solid? A solid is simply something you can apply an effect to. So to create a solid, I'm going to go to File, New. Actually, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go to, I'll get out of there. I'll go to Layer, New, Solid like this, or Command Y is the shortcut. Now, we want it to be 1280 by 720, and with square pixels, that's all fine. Click on Make Comp Size just to be sure that it's 1280 by 720. And let's click Color. I'm going to go for a blue color by clicking on that. That'll do. And click OK. Now, you'll notice a solid is just that, a solid color, a rectangle of solid color, akin to a sort of an Illustrator vector rectangle you might make. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I want to apply an effect. Now this is the first effect we've applied, so let's go back to our pointer tool. Now to find the effect we want to use, it's called CC Starburst, and over here you'll see something called Effects and Presets. So I click on here like that. We have this little search dialog box. There are numerous amount of effects, but the one we're going to start off with is probably the easiest of all. So I'm just going to click in there like this and type in CC Star Burst like this, and up comes this effect. That's where this effect lives. Now to apply effect, there's a couple of ways of doing it. The simplest way is to simply grab it and drag it onto the video like that, and it will give us the effect we're looking for. And I'll Apple Z that and do it another way. I can grab it and drag it straight down onto the timeline, onto the layer like this. It does exactly the same thing. Now, depending how many layers you've got and how hard it is to access the part where you want to apply that effect, sometimes you use the timeline, sometimes you use the stage. So let's just press the space bar and watch that in action. Oh, look at that. Looks like an old-fashioned Doctor Who type thing. And it's just generating it for us. Thanks very much, After Effects. That's all there is to it. Now, there's a number of things we can do with that. Over here, some properties we could animate, but we're not going to look at that in this video. We're just going to accept everything, the defaults. One thing we are going to do is the effect is in front of the TV, so we can change that using layers. I'm going to grab this effect over in the layers over here and simply drag it underneath like I would in Photoshop or whatever. And now, if I press the space bar, that's the effect we're looking for. Very nice indeed. Now, I'm not going to explain how all that effect works. We're going to spend a whole lot of videos on just applying effects and how to animate them and manipulate them over time. But let's just accept that. It looks quite good. A bit retro there with Louis singing away. Okay, now let's have a little bit of fun in this scene. I want to, of course, if you're the younger generation, you probably think that video is a bit naff, a bit silly really. So let's get a reaction from somebody. You'll see if over here what's happened to my project window. It's now become an effects control window, and that can be a bit confusing. So see where it says project here. I could just click on that. I can go back to my project, or Command or Control 0 does the same thing. We'll swap between those two things, and that can be confusing at first. So we're back in our project window. I've got a video here of one of the students at the Design Center in Enmore from many years ago. I found this on the server, and she's quite a good sport. She's just being photographed in front of a green screen. So let's have a little bit of fun with it. So I'm just going to click and drag it down onto my timeline like that. And there it is there. This is where all the fun starts in After Effects, when you have a green screen background, when you shoot a background. You see it all the time on TV where we get rid of the background. Now, to get rid of the background, again, is another series of videos, but let's do it really quickly. So I'm just going to go over here to my effects and presets, and I'm just going to type in key light. Key light is the effect we want. Now, to apply it, as you'll see on the timeline, here's something to notice on the timeline. when I drag that video down, how short that video is, because it's only about, I think about 8 seconds long, this video. That's all the time it takes up on the timeline. Now this is really, really important. Whenever I drag a still image, like a Photoshop file or Illustrator, it takes up the whole timeline. Doesn't matter how big it is. If I drag a video or an audio file, they only take up as much time as they exist. In other words, their duration. And here's a good example here. This one here is quite short. So to see it a little bit better, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the timeline. I'm just going to click and drag this yellow thing, and as you can see, things tend to get a little bit bigger. I'm going to drag it into it so I can see it just that little bit bigger. Nothing's changed in terms of time, just as how we're looking at it has changed. Okay, now to apply the key lights, the same as the last effect we just did, I'm going to grab this and just simply drag it straight onto the video like that. And when you look at the key, all the properties of the key light over here, there's lots to know. But we're just going to do a really simple key by clicking on this screen color like that, clicking on the icon, and try and find a quite dark area of this green. About there is good. And just click on it. Watch the magic. How good is that? How good is that? Away goes the background. And now we have this deep-etched girl, if you like. Let's see what she's up to. She just gets up, looks confused, as you would with Louis Prima singing in the background. Yeah, looking quite confused. I just press the space bar to look at that. Okay, now I can move that to wherever I like along the timeline. So I want her to come in about here at about this many seconds there. Is where I wanted to come in and do a little jump up and down thing like that. Looking very, very confused. She comes onto the stage quite suddenly, but and here's something you'll be doing all the time in After Effects. I want to fade her in and fade her out. So to do that, I'm going to go use some shortcuts. Now here's a shortcut if you're writing anything down. If I press the letter I, that'll take me to what's called the in point of this layer. That's where that layer starts. If I press the letter T for opacity, like that, if I put a keyframe in there, it's now 100%. If I drag that down to 0, she'll disappear. I'll just move the timeline just a fraction. Like that. It could be a little bit more technical. I'll just drag it just a fraction along like this. And I'll put that up to 100%. So she's going to fade in pretty quickly like that. As you can see, she fades in nicely. And I wanted to fade out as well too. So I'm going to place my my current time indicator about here, and I want to copy that keyframe. And we've done this in previous videos. We just wanted to stay at 100%. So to do that, I'm going to click over here in this little triangle like that, and that will copy this keyframe to there. Same thing. So nothing's going to happen. She's going to stay at 100%. Now if I press the letter O, O for the out point, and go to my opacity and drag it down, I'll get an automatic keyframe and drag it back to 0. So she's going to fade in and she's going to fade out like that. So she jumps up, has a look around, gets pretty confused, where am I? And then fades out. So let's have a little bit more fun with her. I'm going to grab that layer that I've just manipulated. I'm going to go Apple D or Control D to duplicate that layer. So now I've got 2 layers. And the reason I put the keyframes in before I duplicated is so that they come with it too. So now if you look at this, in the has got the same keyframes. Okay, I'm going to move that along a little bit to about here. So it's not going to start until the other one finishes. It'll start again, but this time I'm going to scale it down as well. So I'm going to press that S for scale and scale it right down. So she's quite tiny, like this. And I'm going to place her right here in front of the TV, like that. So she gets up. Let's have a look at that. I'll just drag back. I can just drag back before that starts. Press the space bar. Up she jumps. Looks confused, as you would be with a Louis Prima video. Oops, she fades out, and there she is. Comes back, and it fades out again. Very nice indeed. Okay, now that's fantastic. Now to output this as a movie, we can use the render queue. But I want to show you a little trick. Our movie now is, it's about 4 minutes long. We don't want 4 minutes. We just want this part here. Let's say we just wanted to render, say, from about 5 seconds to about 25 seconds, like that. Just this part from here to here. To do that, I'm just going to grab my current time indicator, the yellow thing, and put it where I want to start, approximately there, and press the letter B. And what that does, that brings the start point of our video to that point. Then I'm going to go just a little bit past where all that action happens. I'm going to press the letter N, N for Nelly, like that. So now I can make a movie that's just this. This is called the work area only, not the full length of the timeline. Okay, so let's make a movie out of that. Let's put it all together. To do that, I'm going to go to Composition, Add to Render Queue. Now again, we're going to look at this render queue ad nauseum in another video. But for this video, we just want that work area, that little part of the timeline that we're playing with. So I'm going to click on Best Settings, and down here where it says Time Span, make sure it says Work Area Only. We don't want length of comp, just Work Area Only. That's all you've got to change there. Everything else is fine. And the output module, where it says Lossless there, I'm going to go to QuickTime H.264. This time we're going to use what's called a compression codec. H.264 is just a fancy way of doing an MP4, like that. That'll give me a much smaller file than using a non-compressed codec. No audio output. Click on that, make that 44.1 kilohertz. Now, again, that's a bit technical, but there's only a couple of numbers there to know. That's CD quality, and this is usually video quality. So 44.1. Again, just change the format and click on audio. Everything else is fine. Click OK. Now we want to output it. The third thing to do is, where do you want to put it? We'll put it inside our this one here, and we'll just call it Louis. Louis in space, like that. Everything's fine. Click Save and Render. And away it goes. Click on the render. Don't forget to click the render. Everybody forgets to click this render. So it actually makes the video, and we can see it being made right before our very eyes. Okay, so that's it. That's how to take some video footage, some still images, and a basic effect, and put them together to create a scene in After Effects. And that's what it's all about, doing something like this for advertising, for the web, for whatever, for rock videos, for educational advertising, whatever. Okay, it is so much fun. Okay, thanks for watching.